Division, we are live.
हाँ शुरू कर.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Akash Nogare. I am talking on behalf of Nagpur Bijosov team. We are organizing Seed Festival since 2013 in Nagpur. Today we have Dr. Poonam Pandey and Lidia Cabral, who has done research on green revolution in India and Brazil, and how they have like set narratives that green revolution is a great success in respective countries like India and Brazil. So I introduced Dr. Poonam Pandey. She is a researcher at Flame University at Pune, and Lidia Cabral. She is a researcher at IDS, Institute of Development Studies, University of Sussex at Brighton. So I will ask Dr. Poonam Pandey to go ahead with your presentation.
Can you hear me and see the screen?
Yes, continue.
Okay, thank you so much. Namaste. Good evening to all of you. I am Poonam, and I am an assistant professor of public policy at Flame University. Lidia and I, we are working on a project on green revolution epic narratives in Brazil, China, and India, and this work is part of that project. So we are basically sharing our experiences that we have gathered through 2 years of this project. I thank Bijotsav and also Akash very much for giving us this opportunity to share this work with you. So before I begin, I basically would, okay, I'm not able to move the slides somehow.
Right click. So,
yeah, it's not happening. So let me try again. Not happening. Sorry. I might have to share it in the regular mode without the. Sorry. Sorry.
Would you like me to try?
No. I think I will be able to do it now. It was in this weird mode. Let me try again. So if this doesn't work, I will keep it in this mode. So let me keep it in this mode. Is it okay, Akash, if I keep it in this mode?
You can one time try.
Okay, let me try.
No, it doesn't look good. Can you just try for once?
Yeah. Okay, yeah,
Great.
Okay, it's working. Okay, so yeah, let me talk to you about the current happenings that are going on in around the world. So other than the Ukraine-Russia war and crisis, the another news that is circulating for the past 5-6 months is the Sri Lankan economic crisis, and along with this, there is the Sri Lankan big news about the Sri Lankan agricultural crisis, where BBC, New York Times, Guardian, every big news paper as well as think tank is writing about it. So basically what they're saying that in Sri Lanka, organic farming was promoted by the government, and it went, so these are the headlines that are reading that organic farming went horribly wrong or catastrophically wrong. Another newspaper article reads, and that's New York Times, that Sri Lanka's plunge into organic farming brings disaster. So these are some of the international agencies. Then there is the national agency that's now already talking about learning lessons from Sri Lanka on the shift to organic farming. And then Mint is talking about Sri Lanka's agrarian crisis and a cautionary tale for India. So basically, if we look at these newspaper articles and the newspaper articles that are circulating in national and international media over the past 6 months, it looks like that organic farming has already been declared as a disaster, and it could not be taken forward in such a big scale. So much so that I have also seen reports where they're talking about how organic farming word has become a taboo for Sri Lankan farmers now, and now they're talking about ecological farming, and nobody could talk about organic farming so far. So what do these exaggerated narratives about organic farming and its failure tells us? I mean, by using the narratives such as disaster, catastrophically wrong, or cautionary tale, what is going on in this whole agricultural policy as well as agricultural ecosystem? What I see is happening is that there is a very simplistic story that is being circulated, and nobody is talking about the detailed analysis. Everybody is quickly jumping onto this conclusion that organic farming is problematic, not talking about how this plan was brought forward, not talking about how if farmers were trained for that, if resources were available, if there were inputs. So all these things are hidden and are silent in this big narrative of the epic failure of green revolution. But if we sit back and reflect a little bit more on what is going on and what is happening, if who gains and who loses by this kind of framing of epic failure of organic farming, it looks like that knowingly or unknowingly, these narratives of epic failure of organic farming are strengthening the epic narrative of green revolution and the gene revolution, which is associated to the genetically modified organisms. So in our paper and in the rest of the paper, we will try to show you how in different ways this green revolution epic narratives keeps coming back, either through a celebratory story of how great it was and how it should be taken forward, or through, like I discussed, the failures of the alternatives. So I now invite my colleague Lidia to talk about what these epic narratives are and how they are circulated, and then further her case of Brazilian green revolution. Lidia.
Thanks very much, Poonam, and good evening, everyone. Thank you to the organizers for inviting me to join you this evening. I'm joining you from the south of the United Kingdom. I'm Portuguese, and I'll be talking about Brazil. So quite different parts of the world involved here tonight. But so before I talk about the Brazilian experience in connection to the Green Revolution, I just wanted to introduce in some detail the key concept that has been guiding our research project in India, in Brazil, as well as China. And the key concept is that of epic narrative, which Poonam has already briefly introduced. The idea of an epic narrative is really connected to a foundation story for a country, for people, for a particular identity. And we're drawing on ideas about epics that can be found, for example, in the Western classics, literary classics. For example, Homer's Odyssey, some of you might have heard about it. And this story about an epic moment in the distant past is a story that usually talks about a moment of great perils, of something that is threatening, and that heroic individuals or peoples or organizations respond to. And the epic story usually talks about the great feats, the great achievements that these heroic figures managed to accomplish. So we bring this concept of the epic narrative into the agricultural science field and to interpret the experiences of different countries with the modernization of agricultural science. So if we think about the Indian Green Revolution, but also the equivalents in other countries in the global south, we can identify a moment in the 20th century where there were particular threats. For example, in India, of course, the threat of famine. And we see narratives suggesting that there's been heroic responses to that by individuals, organizations, often associated with state support, that have delivered quite significant achievements, the wonders of science, which in the Indian context has been associated with wheat, the wheat revolution. In Brazil, we hear about the soybean revolution, soybean becoming a tropical crop, and I'll come back to that. And in China, we hear about hybrid rice. So there are these narratives of great achievements driven by heroic individuals, organizations that the epic narratives talks about. Now, usually there's an idea about what sort of agriculture these epics support, and it's what sort of science and technology you have in support to agricultural development, and tends to be a vision of science and technology as dictating the future for agriculture and farmers, and being the sources of knowledge that can help advance, improve the conditions of farmers. So there's quite an unilateral and top-down perspective on how knowledge and innovation is generated, and quite a strong focus on individual crops, the efficiency of those crops, so quite a lot of emphasis on yields, and extracting, making the best of the natural resources, so exploiting the environment in order to have efficient agricultural sectors. So this perspective has been quite problematic, and I'm sure many of you know, are familiar with some of the critique to the Green Revolution. I'll come to that. But let me now move on to the Brazilian experience, just to give you a little bit more detail of how the Green Revolution narrative has been, what sort of narrative has been put in place in that country. So just to locate, Brazil is the South American giant, that is highlighted there in green, a very large country, usually known for being for hosting a great part of the Amazonia rainforest, also known for football and several other things. And this is the context where the story that I'm going to be telling you briefly is located. So next, yeah, that's just another map of Brazil. And now I'm going to situate the Brazilian Green Revolution in the 20th century and connect it to a period where ideas about modernization were quite influential. And you can see that the picture that you see there is the construction of Brasilia, which is Brazil's capital. It's a new city, a relatively new city, which was founded in the late 60s. And that photo is a picture of that moment of foundation of Brasilia, which marks also a time of rapid industrialization in the country. And agriculture was seen as needing to address a supply crisis and feed the growing the growing industrial sector. But so this is also a time when Brazil was governed by a military regime, so a very sort of strong state that sought to control the country. So the story of modernization of Brazilian agriculture is also a story of control of the territory, social stability. This was, of course, a moment when the south of Brazil was more densely populated, and there was quite a bit of tension around access to land. So there was a need to move people around, and the military state could sponsor that and promote the agricultural development of parts of the country that were seen as unoccupied. And I'll come to that. Perhaps the next slide now, which brings me to that part of the country called the Cerrado. So the Cerrado is a biome which occupies about 25% of the country, so very large area of Brazil. And this is a biome that resembles a savanna. It has particular characteristics, but it's internationally known as the Brazilian savanna. And it was seen by the regime at the time, as well as scientists, as land that was unoccupied. It was unproductive and could be occupied to expand agriculture, to modernize agriculture, and make it to the country's breadbasket. So the Green Revolution, starting in the 70s, is very much associated with a transformation of this territory, the Cerrado. Next slide, please. The international newspaper, The Economist, has in 2010, a time when Brazil was doing very well economically. There was a lot of discussion in international media about Brazil, the role of Brazil in the world. And The Economist published a piece that entitled The Miracle of the Cerrado. And this is really emphasizing that story, the Green Revolution, a transformation of the Cerrado starting in the 1970s, and emphasizing the role of public funded science and technology, particularly the role of Embrapa, which is the Brazilian agricultural research agency, and the role that Embrapa Science played in turning soybeans into a tropical crop. So in this piece of The Economist, they say that soybeans were until then a temperate climate crop, sensitive to temperature changes and requiring 4 seasons. And Embrapa managed to make it work in the tropical climates of the Cerrado. It managed to make it more tolerant to the very acidic soils of the Cerrado, and also speed up the plant's growing period, and have 2 cycles of production every year. So this really revolutionized agriculture in this part of the country, and turning into a landscape largely cultivated with soybean monocrops, but also, of course, livestock and other crops, but with a very strong emphasis on soybeans and the major achievement of turning soybeans into a tropical crop. Next slide, please. Norman Borlaug, whom you see in picture there, and who won the Nobel Peace Prize for his contributions to agricultural science and presumably feeding the world. So this is, again, an element of the global epic of the Green Revolution, with Borlaug as its main hero. Norman Borlaug referred to the conversion of the Cerrado, this transformation, soybean-driven transformation of the Cerrado, as one of the greatest achievements of agricultural science in the 20th century. Next slide, please. And the results of that in terms of yields and in terms of market domination are quite striking. Indeed, agricultural productivity increased dramatically since that period, not only for soybeans, but also for other crops. Brazil is today an agricultural power in the world for a number of crops and agricultural commodities. It's now the first in the world for soybeans. It has recently surpassed the United States. So this strategy of modernization has indeed produced its fruits in terms of efficiency and control of global value chains. But this has had its costs. And that brings me, I think, to the next slide. So, as I said before, the Cerrado was looked at the time as an empty land, a land where agricultural modernization could expand freely, an unproductive land that could be turned into a breadbasket. But this was not empty land. And besides its rich biodiversity, and I'll come to that, the Cerrado is also home to a very rich mosaic of social groups. There's more than 80 ethnic groups living in the Cerrado. And in the picture there, you see the Crao indigenous group, but there's many other social identities, cultural identities connected to the biodiversity of the Cerrado, which is not related to soybeans and livestock, but to indigenous plants and ways of relating to nature. Next slide, please. So here I want to just emphasize some of the consequences of the modernization of the Cerrado. Rather than a miracle, one can look at it as a tragedy. which has had many negative impacts besides cultural erasure and agrobiodiversity loss that I've mentioned, deforestation, of course, associated with that, and the extensive use of pesticides in connection to monocropping, but also in terms of the social costs, in addition to cultural erasure that I mentioned there. We see that there's significant concentration of land and wealth in this part of the country. Large multinational corporations, either in the production, processing, but also in supplying seeds and other inputs, are quite strongly present in this part of the country. And of course, just to note there, I said that the Cerrado represents 25% of the country in terms of area, but it's also represents 30% of Brazil's biodiversity. So this is a very important site for ecological as well as social diversity and wealth. And this has been compromised by the adopted model of modernization associated with the Green Revolution. Next slide, please. This is a story so very strongly associated with what happened in the 20th century, but the story hasn't ended, and the Green Revolution endures and continues to the same ideals about agricultural development, the same ideals and understanding of the role of science in agricultural development continue to be found as dominant in Brazil and with an impact in this landscape. And the latest chapter of the transformation of the Cerrado sees the expansion of the agriculture frontier further north to an area that is now known as Mato Piba. That's the states of Maranhão, Tocantins, Piauí, and Bahia. So Mato Piba, it's the first two letters of the states' names. And we see this as a space where there's significant expansion of land-based conflicts and also water and other natural resource-related conflicts. And this is an area where we see problems of course, deforestation and degradation of the territory, but also of wealth concentration. So small farms with up to 10 hectares in size represent 40% of all farming units in this area, but they hold less than 1% of the land. So that shows you the scale of the inequalities of this of agriculture in this frontier. Next slide, please. So this is just to conclude, to say that the Green Revolution ideal endures, and it's being often repackaged, particularly in connection to the sustainability agenda, which is now normalized around the world. The dominant science and technology actors and organizations have managed to come up with alternatives that connect to sustainability ideals, but still reflect the same vision of top-down scientist-farmer relationship, and the idea that that farmers are passive recipients of technology the scientists developed. So one example of a presumably sustainable version of agricultural modernization in the Cerrado today is the model of integrated crop, livestock, and forestry. As you can see in the picture, this is a very orderly system. You might have noticed the trees that you see represented there are eucalyptus. So this is not a tree that is native to this part of the world. This is very much a monocropping of eucalyptus associated with crops and with livestock. And by the way, the cows that you see there, these are improved breeds of a breed that is actually native from India, and that's proven very, very efficient in Brazil. So this particular model just shows how the Green Revolution ideal is now being repackaged as more sustainable, and therefore being used as a way to claim the continuing value of green revolution type of models to offer solutions to the current crisis. And I'll stop there. And Poonam, you'll continue with the Indian version of the epic. Thank you.
Thanks, Lydia. So there was a request for using some Hindi, and so I'm now switching to a mixed kind of language, which we in India call as khichdi. So it's a mix of Hindi and English, or whatever I could come up with. So I hope that's okay. Pardon me if I use some words incorrectly. तो अभी तक जो हम लोग ये प्रोजेक्ट में करने की कोशिश किए हैं, ये समझने की कोशिश किए हैं कि इंडिया, चाइना और ब्राजील में कैसे सेम कहानी ग्रीन रेवोल्यूशन की बार बार रिपीट हो रही है। और ग्रीन रेवोल्यूशन की प्रैक्टिस तो है ही ग्राउंड पे बहुत ही कॉम्प्लिकेटेड, ऑल्सो बहुत ही ज़्यादा सेंट्रली कंट्रोल्ड है, लेकिन उसका जो नैरेटिव है वो अपने आप में बार बार अलग अलग सिचुएशन के सवाल के प्रॉब्लम के सॉल्यूशन, सवाल के जवाब की तरह प्रेजेंट किया जाता है। और सारी दुनिया में ग्रीन रेवोल्यूशन ने ऐसा इस स्टोरी ने, इस कहानी ने, जैसे कहते हैं ना हमारे एपिक हुआ करते थे महाभारत और रामायण, उस तरह का स्टेटस ले लिया है इसने। और सारे देश, जैसे मैं आपको दिखाती हूँ यहाँ पे, अलग अलग फॉर्म में, इवन अफ्रीका में अभी बहुत ज्यादा एक नए ग्रीन रेवोल्यूशन, एक अफ्रीकन ग्रीन रेवोल्यूशन की बात हो रही है। उसी तरह से जब जेनेटिकली मॉडिफाइड क्रॉप्स पुश किए गए थे इंडिया में, तो जीन रेवोल्यूशन की फॉर्म में उनको प्रेजेंट किया गया था। उनको कहा गया था कि ये वो वाली कहानी जो इतिहास था ग्रीन रेवोल्यूशन ने जो बदल दिया था इंडिया के, भारत के कृषि सिचुएशन को, वही कहानी ये कर देगा, ये बहुत बेनिफिशियल होगा, फूड सिक्योरिटी बढ़ा देगा एंड थिंग्स लाइक दैट। तो ये सारी बातें हर बार रिपीट की जाती हैं नई नई कहानी के साथ, क्योंकि इस पॉलिसी सर्कल्स में और एकेडेमिया में भी और न्यूज़ के लिए ये बहुत ही ज़्यादा अपीलिंग चीज़ है। और लिडिया ने जैसे डिस्क्राइब किया, और मैं भी आगे चल के भी यही बताऊंगी कि एक पर्टिकुलर कहानी सुनाई जाती है, कुछ चीज़ें ही उसके बारे में बताई जाती हैं और अब बाकी चीज़ें छुपा ली जाती हैं, जैसे कि एनवायरनमेंट के ऊपर क्या असर पड़ रहा है, प्राकृतिक सिचुएशन के ऊपर, बायोडाइवर्सिटी के ऊपर क्या असर पड़ रहा है, ये सारी बातें नहीं की जाती हैं। ग्रीन रेवोल्यूशन पूरी तरह से मोनोक्रॉपिंग की कहानी है, लेकिन इसके बावजूद उसने इतना ज़्यादा बायोडाइवर्सिटी को डिस्ट्रक्शन किया है। विद वंदना शिवा के बारे में आप लोग सब लोग जानते हैं कि वो, और भी बहुत सारे ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस हैं जो बायोडाइवर्सिटी कंजर्वेशन के ऊपर काम करते हैं। सब भी इस चीज़ को बार बार रिपीट करते हैं, और पर ग्रीन रेवोल्यूशन की कहानी में इसको बार बार छुपा लिया जाता है। तो जेंडर रिलेशंस और किस तरह से एग्रीकल्चरल सीन पूरा बदल गया है, किस तरह से वो बहुत ज़्यादा मेल डोमिनेटेड हो गया है, वो भी क्या कहते हैं, खासतौर से पंजाब में, और जगहों पर तो नहीं, पर खासतौर से पंजाब में जो हब रहे हैं ग्रीन रेवोल्यूशन में, उनमें किस तरह से रिलेशनशिप्स बदल गए हैं, एग्रीकल्चरल सीन बदल गया है, यंग जनरेशन किस तरह से डिसइंटरेस्टेड है एग्रीकल्चर में आज की तारीख में, ये सारी बातें छुपा ली जाती हैं ग्रीन रेवोल्यूशन से। और यही कहानी, ऐसा नहीं है कि सिर्फ अफ्रीका में, इंडिया में भी ये कहानी दोहराई जा रही है। देखिए मैं बताती हूँ, ये जो 3rd नंबर की ये जो फोटो है यहाँ पे, सेकेंड ग्रीन रेवोल्यूशन इन ईस्टर्न इंडिया। तो अभी रिसेंटली 2010 में गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया का एक इनिशिएटिव हुआ था, जो ये प्रोग्राम अभी भी चल रहा है, जिसमें वेस्ट बंगाल, उड़ीसा, झारखंड, ईस्टर्न यूपी, बिहार और आसाम में ग्रीन रेवोल्यूशन को दोबारा से लाने की बात की जा रही थी। और मैंने बिहार में कुछ फील्ड वर्क किया है, और ये सारी उनकी बुकलेट्स हैं जो उन्होंने रिलीज की, सेम कहानी कि इन स्टेट्स में जो पैदावार है वो बहुत ज़्यादा नहीं, तो सारी डेफिनेशन इन प्रोडक्टिविटी टर्म्स दे टॉक अबाउट। तो सारी कहानी की पैदावार ज़्यादा है, बढ़ानी चाहिए, किसानों की आय बढ़ानी चाहिए, और इसके लिए ग्रीन रेवोल्यूशन लाना इन जगहों पे ज़रूरी है। और पूरा कहानी है इनपुट के डायरेक्शन में। तो सारा फोकस जो है, ये जो टेबल है, ये पूरी फोकस जो है वो इनपुट की बात कर रही है कि सीड दे दो, ट्यूबवेल्स दे दो, ज्यादा इनपुट्स डालने को बोलो, इरिगेशन करवा दो। लेकिन ये भी अभी का जो ग्रीन रेवोल्यूशन की जो बात हो रही है वो सिर्फ डेमोन्स्ट्रेशन लेवल पे है, तो कोई बड़ा सपोर्ट गवर्नमेंट की तरफ से नहीं है। तो अगर आज न्यू लिबरलिज्म के जमाने में जब ये लोग ग्रीन रेवोल्यूशन को लाने की बात करते हैं, तो बेसिकली ये एक तरह से प्राइवेट एंटिटीज को ही सपोर्ट करने की बात कहते हैं, क्योंकि गवर्नमेंट सिर्फ डेमोन्स्ट्रेशन लेवल पे ही सपोर्ट करने वाली है। देखिए, मॉनिटरिंग को सिर्फ 1% फंडिंग एलोकेट किया गया। इसी तरह से कोई भी बात नहीं हो रही है पब्लिक प्रोक्योरमेंट कैसे होगा। मैंने बिहार के किसानों से बात की और उनका ज्यादा से ज्यादा जो मेजर परेशानी है वो उनकी यही कि पैसा नहीं, जितना उनको आमदनी होनी चाहिए उतनी आमदनी होती नहीं है, खर्चा ज्यादा है खेती में, लेकिन कोई मार्केट मैकेनिज्म वहाँ पे फंक्शन नहीं कर रहा है। आपको पता होगा कि एमएसपी और ये एपीएमसी मंडीज बिहार में 2006 में खत्म कर दी गई थी, ये सोच के, इस होप में, जो कि अभी पूरा 1-1.5 साल जो लड़ाई चली है किसानों की, अब बिहार में ये पहले खत्म हो गया था, ये सोच के कि नहीं प्राइवेट इन्वेस्टमेंट आएगा और किसानों की आय बढ़ेगी, लेकिन ऐसा कुछ भी नहीं हुआ। तो ग्रीन रेवोल्यूशन फिर से आ रहा है, लेकिन ग्रीन रेवोल्यूशन की बात इन स्टेट्स में की जा रही है, पर एक डिफरेंट ग्रीन रेवोल्यूशन की बात की जा रही है जिसमें सिर्फ इनपुट अपनाने को बढ़ावा दिया जा रहा है और सपोर्ट मैकेनिज्म, इंस्टीट्यूशनल इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर, जो भी किसानों को जो गवर्नमेंट की तरफ से जो सपोर्ट था उसके बारे में कोई चर्चा नहीं हो रही है। तो अब हम आते हैं कि ये कहानी जो बार बार दोहराई जाती है, जहां पे ये सक्सेसफुल हुई वहां क्या हुआ। हमने देखा अभी पंजाब के केस में कि ये लोग बार बार इन बिहार के केस में और इन नए ईस्टर्न स्टेट्स के केसों में ग्रीन रेवोल्यूशन की बात करते हैं जब, तो कहते हैं कि प्रोडक्टिविटी बढ़ाएंगे, आमदनी बढ़ेगी, पर पंजाब में तो प्रोडक्टिविटी ऑलरेडी बढ़ी हुई है। और वहां पे बार बार ये आर्ग्यूमेंट दिया जा रहा है कि जब फूड सिक्योरिटी की प्रॉब्लम थी तब ये सपोर्ट सिस्टम लाया गया था, और अब क्योंकि फूड सफिशिएंट है इंडिया तो इस सपोर्ट सिस्टम को रखने की जरूरत नहीं है। ये सारी बातें अशोक गुलाटी जी ने न्यूज़पेपर्स में कही हैं, तो आपको लिंक्स मिल जाएंगे उसके। तो न्यू लिबरलिज्म के जमाने में जब स्टेट पीछे जा रहा है, उस सिचुएशन में ग्रीन रेवोल्यूशन की आप बात कैसे कर सकते हैं, प्लेंटी की बात कैसे कर सकते हैं, और क्या तरीका है उसको दूसरी तरह से देखने का। तो अगर कंक्लूड करें इस पूरी कहानी को, तो बात यह है कि ग्रीन रेवोल्यूशन जो है जमीनी तौर पे तो एक्टिविटीज करता ही है, एनवायरमेंटल डिस्ट्रक्शन, मोनोक्रॉपिंग एंड डिफरेंट सोशल रिलेशनशिप्स इन द रूरल एरियाज, पर आइडिया के तौर पे इसका बहुत पावर है। और वो कैसे असर्ट करता है, पहली जो कहानी मैंने आपको सुनाई कि जो ऑल्टरनेटिव्स जितने भी आते हैं उनको क्रिटिसाइज करके, कि ऑल्टरनेटिव्स जैसे हो रहा है जो कि श्रीलंका में पूरी तरह से दिखा दिया गया है, मतलब बार बार ये न्यूज़पेपर्स और मीडिया डिस्कशन असर्ट कर रहे हैं कि ग्रीन रेवोल्यूशन इज नॉट द पाथ फॉर, सॉरी, ऑर्गेनिक फार्मिंग इज नॉट द पाथ फॉरवर्ड, एंड श्रीलंकन एग्जांपल हैज शोन दैट। तो एक तरह से तो ये ग्रीन रेवोल्यूशन का एपिक अपने आप को दोबारा रीजर्ट करता है ऑल्टरनेटिव्स को डिलेजिटिमाइज करके, by calling them big failures, by saying that they could not sustain food security and we have to bring back the green revolution way of doing things. और दूसरा तरीका है जो लिडिया ने डिस्क्राइब किया और जो मैंने बताया अभी, कि बार बार अपनी कहानी को कि कितना बड़ा सक्सेस था और उस सक्सेस को दोहराने की जरूरत है और प्रोडक्टिविटी को बढ़ाने की जरूरत है। तो इन दो तरीकों से ग्रीन रेवोल्यूशन का जो ये एपिक कहानी है, जो कथा है, ये अपनी बार बार रिपीट करता है, और इसके लॉन्ग टर्म पॉलिसी इम्प्लीकेशंस भी हैं, लॉन्ग टर्म ग्राउंड पे भी इफेक्ट इसके देखने को मिलते हैं। और ये सारे ऑल्टरनेटिव्स की कहानी, उनकी सक्सेस स्टोरीज, उनकी पॉसिबिलिटीज को एक तरह से मास्क कर देता है। तो अब लिडिया बताएंगी कि कैसे हमारा जो आज का जो बीज महोत्सव है, इस तरह के इवेंट्स का एक बहुत बड़ा रोल है इस ग्रीन रेवोल्यूशन के एपिक नैरेटिव को कॉन्ट्रास्ट करने को, उसको ऑपोजिशन प्रोवाइड करने को। लिडिया।
Yes. So shall I? I wonder whether. Yeah. So I'll continue. I'm sorry. I have to stick to English. The alternative for me would be Portuguese, and I don't think that would help. But in this last slide, I think Poonam and I wanted to think about how initiatives like Bijutsav, the festival that you're all celebrating, can play a role in countering these green revolution epics, which I think we argued quite strongly have been problematic for many reasons. And I think there are several roles that these types of initiatives can play. It will be interesting to hear from the audience what you think that such contributions could be. But our initial ideas for the debate is that there is a role in rescuing histories of places, of people, of practices, of seeds. Very much the focus of the festival, histories that have been forgotten, perhaps have been erased by Green Revolution experiences. And it is important to bring those up to the surface and show that there is a space for these alternatives and that they can offer perhaps better solutions that combine not only ecological concerns but combine them with social justice and equity concerns. So we also think that there's a need to claim the space in the sphere of agricultural knowledge, which is too dominated by science, produced in ways that are not very inclusive and that are not very participatory. So I think there's a need to celebrate other forms of knowledge, other forms of innovation, and bring those to the surface. And in doing that, we also feel that it is important to connect initiatives like the festival that happen in particular locations, in a particular location in India, connected to it with other initiatives that happen either in the country, regionally, as well as internationally, to give strength to experiences that are very localized, are very micro in scale. But I think if we draw connections between them, then they can have more weight in challenging epic narratives and challenging ideas that you can have globalized blueprints that can solve the problems of hunger, of climate and sustainability and so on. So I think there's a need for a more joined up approach that doesn't equate experience from different contexts, but celebrates diversity. But gets these different experiences connected so that they can all have a stronger voice and become more visible to challenge those very dominant ideas. And with that, I conclude. Thank you for your attention. And I hope some of what we said is useful to how you see these issues. And we very much welcome any comments, contributions, and also your views on how Bijutsav can challenge these epic narratives that are so problematic. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Lidia and Dr. Poonam. Dr. Poonam, do you want to anything?
No, she's concluded it for us, both of us, so I don't have to add anything. But we would be happy if there are some questions or comments.
I would like to say thank you to Lidia Cabral and Dr. Poonam Pandey for their like enlightening knowledge about the green revolution and how they have like successfully set the narrative that it was a huge success in like countries like India, Brazil, in developing countries like India, Brazil, and China. And I really appreciate their effort that how they like kind of convince us that we need events like small events and local events to conserve our diversity and to conserve traditional knowledge and the practice and the people. I would really say that it's a very wonderful thing. Like and like a lot of people have asked us that maybe if you can share the presentation like we have presented today, so it would be really good. Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
very much for the attention and giving us the space to share our work with you. And we are very happy. We will be very happy to share the presentation. And I wish, I mean, I would really would like to attend it in person next time, hopefully, if there is no COVID.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you
Sorry,
so much.
it got disconnected. Yeah.